We all just want the world to go back to normal. And by normal, I mean living your life without the restrictions brought on by the pandemic. While no one would argue life was perfect in 2019, we can all agree that it's gotten a lot worse since then. We are all yearning for freedom. But that's not exactly true. See, there's a group of people, powerful people, who saw the pandemic as a gift on a silver platter. They see lockdowns, mandates, and fear-mongering as a means to grab more power and consolidate control. There's a group of people actively working to dismantle the principles of democracy and Western society. And they won't stop till a new kind of government is created, one in which you are not a citizen, but a subject. Helen, Georgia is a town that was built in America, meant to resemble a southern border town in Germany. Thousands of German immigrants fled and came to America in order to escape the remnants of feudalism that impacted much of Europe. Feudalism is a type of government that centralizes ownership of literally everything into the hands of the royals, lords, dukes, earls, and kings. Now, if you were lucky, you might become a knight and actually get to own some land. But most were not that lucky and lived lives as peasants, where they owned nothing. They were told to be happy about it. Ravensburg, Germany is a village with a history that dates all the way back to 746. It's situated near the border of Germany and Switzerland, and it's known as the City of Towers and Gates. There are reminders of the Dark Ages and feudalism found on every corner. Fast forward to the 1930s. Feudalism is nothing more than a history lesson. Germany is recovering from World War I, and then this guy comes to power. During this time, a boy named Klaus Schwab was born in Ravensburg, Germany. Where you grow up has an effect on you. Growing up in 1930s Germany will burden anyone with a lot of baggage. Ravensburg was no exception. During that time, all children aged 6 or older were required to join the Hitler Youth, which trained German boys and girls to think the way Hitler wanted them to think, and to never be free again, not in their whole lives. The main employer in Ravensburg was a company called Escher Weiss, who used forced laborers, slaves, and Allied POWs in their wartime facilities. Now, who was a member of the upper management of Escher Weiss? None other than Klaus Schwab's father, Eugen Schwab. Now, before we go on any further, it's important to note that virtually nothing is known about the upbringing of Klaus Schwab. It's all been meticulously buried or erased. This is the upbringing that influenced Klaus Schwab to go on to create one of the most influential organizations on the planet, the World Economic Forum. The City of Towers and Gates and the lessons from the National Socialist Party raised Klaus. That's why it's no surprise that a cabal like the WEF could position itself to become kind of a super governmental body, one that surveils and controls men and women at the highest levels of power all over the globe, coercing them to follow the radical visions of Klaus Schwab. But the World Economic Forum is not controlling world leaders by doing anything insane or illegal. They're just practicing good old-fashioned influence peddling. Others may know it as lobbying. The vision of the WEF is to redefine capitalism, society, and human development. And they aren't shy about it. The WEF leadership has openly stated that they want to create a new world order and reset society based on the dictates of the technocracy. They've been at it since 1971, when the WEF was known as the European Management Forum. They started holding conferences for corporate elites in Davos, Switzerland. We'll come back to Davos in a minute. But in the 70s, Klaus was a 33-year-old economics professor in Geneva, Switzerland, From what we know, he wasn't particularly wealthy or connected, and yet somehow he was able to gather the leaders from Europe's largest economies, wine them and dine them, and put forth his agenda, which they were all more than happy to bring back to their home countries. Games like this have been played since the beginning of humanity. There are the ideas of freedom and individualism that are created in everyone: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And then there are the forces of authoritarianism, always moving towards subjugation, exclusion, and repression. Problem is, the elites always make the first move. This game has been played a dozen times or so over the past 1,000 years, and each time the stakes are the same. Either humanity moves forward or the elites consolidate and humanity regresses. A long time ago, freedom lost, and that gave us the Dark Ages. Then the game was played again and freedom won. We got the Renaissance. Fast forward to today, and the World Economic Forum is trying to capture two vital pieces of freedom: property rights, your castle. The WEF doesn't like for people to own their own property. According to them, that's what created this entire climate change mess. And now it's time for you to give back all your possessions to your overlords, or else you're going to kill the planet. Agency, your ability to move and thrive. It's kind of pointless for the elites to take your property rights when you can just move to somewhere that respects your property rights. Taking away your agency or ability to make decisions is hugely important for the WEF. Every spring, a cloud of private jets darken the skies over the Alps as hundreds of billionaires, dictators, presidents, cronies, and warlords descend on the sleepy town of Davos to talk about what Klaus Schwab wants the world to be like and how they can be part of this glorious revolution. But from the early days, Davos has been a place where policies about blotting out the sun to control climate change or ironing out the details of creating a global ID system are hashed out over a glass of Weingut Chardonnay and some ethically harvested sturgeon eggs. It's the goal of the WEF to create a more equitable and inclusive world and to redefine capitalism. So you would think that the capitalism we had before the WEF was bad and regressive. But the data shows that the longer the WEF has been around, the worse inequality has gotten. And the only people who have truly benefited are the elites.
On behalf of the
1971 was a big year. It was the year that the world came off the gold standard, started using the dollar as the global reserve currency.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
Since then, everything has steadily come out of whack. Wages have flatlined while productivity has skyrocketed. Income growth for the top 1% of earners has exploded while the bottom 90% has remained flat. Cumulative inflation has gone up by over 3,000%. The Consumer Price Index graph looks like a hockey stick. Political polarization is at all-time highs. Fossil fuel usage is off the charts. Incarceration rates have exploded, and overall mental health, especially among Gen Z, is cratering and on the verge of a crisis. By all available metrics, the world was steady improving until the year 1970. Then the WEF began pushing its globalist agenda, and now we're facing the biggest financial crisis we've seen since the Great Depression. None of the policies they've been pushing have seemed to work. It's only caused more inequality, it's crushed the middle class, and it's only benefited the top 1%. So the plan has failed in every way, right? No. Pain is the point, because inequality is the plan. The plan uses phrases like, "We are hopeful this plan categorically rejects the doomsday mindset," or In 2020 and 2021, government policy alone stood between the global economy and the abyss to make you feel safe and cared for. But the proof is in the pudding. It's a ploy to bring about feudalism 2.0, where you'll own nothing and be happy about it. The World Economic Forum has a plan to change just about everything to make it more equitable. Money, energy, climate change, food, city planning, medicine, the internet, yes, even blockchain. They talk about financial inclusion and redefining capitalism, but they only make these rules behind closed doors. And anyone who opposes their definitions, well, they're seen as undesirable. How could someone be so backwards in their thinking to believe in ideas like free markets, populism, and individualism? The engine of these ideas is Klaus. He has a permanent board seat on the WEF. He can't be voted out, and he chooses board members for 3-year terms. The march towards a godless centralized utopia ruled by an unelected class of technocrats is the goal. And the WEF is closing the gates on freedom as fast as they can during a post-pandemic world. Klaus Schwab has even bragged that WEF acolytes have been able to penetrate every level of world governments to push the WEF agenda.
What we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, is that we penetrate the cabinets. Half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet are for our actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
It's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina and it's true in France.
So, what's next for the World Economic Forum? Well, that's simple. They tell us. Climate change is the next crisis, and it's one that will never end. The powers that big governments took in the name of protecting us from the pandemic will never be restored as long as there's a threat to the climate. Everyone and everything must change to avert a climate catastrophe. This crisis prompted the return of big government, which will not be reversed. Everything must be thrown out. Klaus says a new world, not a new normal, is emerging, and that a deep crisis like the pandemic causes us to rethink the social contract that binds us together and the way we do things. In chess, it's always a good plan to control the center of the board. This limits your opponent's ability to get into position. Klaus and his deep state cronies have moved quickly during the pandemic and are now in position to threaten our families, our ability to control our own destiny, and our freedom from coercion. Doesn't look good, but controlling the center of the board has a fault. If you move too quickly and get overextended, you become vulnerable. And one move that you didn't see coming could be your downfall. We are in the mid-game. This is where tides turn and blunders can be made. In order for the WEF to succeed in their Orwellian takeover, they need to control the messaging and control the money. Thankfully, Bitcoin has done a great job at disrupting the entire financial system. But it's up to you, me, and everyone else who believes in the rights of the individual to shed light and raise awareness about the WEF. The more light that is shed, the harder it is for them to control the messaging. Just look at what happened in Canadian Parliament when an MP asked about the WEF's influence.
Which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda?
A really good question there, but the audio is really bad and the video is really bad as well. And I apologize. I don't.
Property and agency, Bitcoin and free speech. These are the tools that we have to hold our ground and force Klaus Schwab to make a blunder.